welcome to the Rimworld mod rundown. We'll be taking a quick look at what you can expect to see from Vanilla Quests Expanded Deadlife. For starters, you'll need to own the Anomaly DLC, as well as the additional workshop content, Vanilla Expanded Framework, and Harmony. A mod that makes use of Anomaly? These are rare. If you've played the other two releases in the Quest Expanded series so far, you'll find that Deadlife is a little bit more straightforward in its approach, which isn't to say it's easy by any means. With the generator, you had a huge resource sink, which was also kind of the case with Cryptoforge, if you wanted to actually make use of the weapons or armor anyway, and didn't just rob the ships blind. Deadlife, on the other hand, is generous in its rewards, with ancient silos granting you access to large amounts of resource crates, provided that you're coming prepared to face the threats that lurk within its extremely dark corridors. Just like the other quest mods, you're also getting the opportunity to recruit a new character, grab some new gear, and bring home a structure or two that you can set up in your own base. Deadlife is considerably more combat focused than the other quest mods, so before starting the chain you will want to make sure you've got a reasonable amount of gear on your strike team, as well as carefully considering when you want to take on the final step of this chain, because failing the final Deadlife step is considerably worse than messing up a standard quest.
Oh, I've wasted my life.
Just like we did with the other quest mods, we're going to go through this one step by step and cover what you're likely to encounter and what new parts become available. That means we'll begin covering Deadlife by accepting the Ancient Silo quest. This works just like any of the other quest mods. You're going to be granted this after around 30 days of in-game time. The slightly different part with an Ancient Silo is that it is a repeatable quest. Once you've finished it, you will be offered another of these within the next 60 days or so. These quests aren't locked to appearing in a specific region like the Cryptoforge or the generator either, which means if you're living on the equator, you aren't going to need to travel across the entire world to get to it, with sites typically spawning up to a maximum of 50 tiles away from your home base. That means a pod launcher will always be able to land you there right away, leaving just a few days of travel for the return trip and ensuring that your base isn't left defenseless for an entire quad run. The Ancient Silos make use of the pit gate mechanics from Anomaly, in a sense of the site that you arrive at will not have all of the exploration available on the top side of the map, which makes it far harder to just pack up and leave if things start to go wrong. The silo hatch is normally guarded by a fair few shamblers. If you can get your hands on some of the gear from Anomaly before setting off to handle these threats, it's going to be a great help to keep you safe. Once the shamblers guarding the silo door have been dealt with, it's time to force it open and head down into the real area of this quest site.
I'm not doing okay.
What's the matter?
Can't see shit.
The first thing you're going to notice is the use of a unnatural darkness mechanic down here. This isn't just 0% light as it works overnight. This is actually going to impact you as a player being able to see what the hell is going on in this location, rather than just an accuracy and speed debuff on your colonists. It's why those flares are so helpful to bring to this location. You are also given a few other somewhat ridiculous but possible options though. If you decided to go the route of throwing colonists to the site in pods, consider preemptively charging some batteries and adding those into the mix too, as well as building and uninstalling some lamps so that they can also be sent. This at the very least will allow you to establish some reliable lighting around the entryway to the silo, a fallback point of sorts. This is getting slightly overkill, as one of the things you're likely to find extremely early into exploring this silo is a crate with disruptor flares inside. These work mechanically like the belt of disruptor flares that you can craft once you've encountered a site stealer, only they are equipped like a grenade rather than a utility item, meaning you're going to have an unlimited supply of these, because Rimworld ammo logic is a little bit special. These flares do have a limited lifespan of 4 minutes, which may sound like a lot, but you aren't going to want to go bombing through these corridors like it's a race, as it's a pretty easy way to draw all kinds of unwanted attention. If you have a Psycaster in your party, it's a pretty good location to make use of Solar Pinhole. The 5-day duration means you can reliably use this to keep the main corridors illuminated and saturate individual rooms with flares instead. Now, there are a couple of tricks you can do if you're using other mods to make this place more manageable before you start exploring. Are they a little bit cheap? Yeah, but they do work. Firstly is using Select Similar across something like the steel wall in this area. If you're using Allow tool, it gives you a pretty immediate snapshot of the surrounding corridors. If you're using Designator Shapes, you can go one further. Combine the Planning tool with the Paint bucket to mark all of the walls with plans and draw the outline of the facility. Or you could Paint bucket the floor instead. But I find this a little bit harder to read, and it also takes a few applications, as it has a maximum radius.
Isn't that corrupt? Isn't that cheating?
Once you start exploring a little bit further, you're going to find that the ancient silo doors are incredibly slow to open. They can't be deconstructed either and have a fairly sizable health pool. It is well worth either destroying the door or the wall to the side of it to allow for easier traversal throughout the silo complex. It's going to help you avoid getting overwhelmed by any shamblers that you encounter down here too if you need to fall back. Doing a little bit of deconstruction on the furniture that you find down here will also give you access to a lot of additional steel if you wanted to expand on the battery tactic and instead bring the materials for a tox generator or two, as now you'll find a lot of additional steel for conduits and more standing lamps. Don't be afraid to make use of the build tools in this area. You can always reclaim a lot of the materials that you use before you leave by deconstructing as you make your way back to the stairwell. What you need to be really careful of down here is triggering certain pods of enemies, as it might wake up others, meaning you're going to hear a lot of banging on other walls as shamblers are trying to make their way through the complex to get to your team. Locking things down at the stairwell with a good amount of light isn't the worst idea, you just need to be mindful that you're running the risk of being hit on multiple sides if shamblers break down the walls at the same time. Finding the source of the noise, heading towards it and dealing with it directly is also an option, although it can lead to the breacher being overwhelmed by more zombies than you may have originally thought. Now, I'm sure this goes without saying for some, do be aware that whilst fire is a great defense against shamblers, there is just about enough flammable stuff down here that you may be running the risk of turning the silo into an oven. And once that spontaneous combustion threshold is reached, there isn't really a lot you can do besides watch it all burn down around you. So bringing flares is a good thing. Rocking up with an incinerator or making liberal use of the Hellcat rifle's underbarrel, maybe not so much.
Marge, turn down the heat. That's better.
So we're exploring the corridors, we're killing roaming hordes of shamblers, we're lighting up the places we go. What can we expect to find? Crates. A hell of a lot of crates, as well as a few helpful buildings that grant a little bit of extra light to assist with our exploration efforts, and a few other structures that exist purely to hinder us. For the sake of better explaining this mod and giving you a little bit more visual clarity, rather than the awful video compression on incredibly dark maps, I've cheated a little bit here in dev mode to remove the darkness and illuminate the silo to better show it's off. Let's cover the positive things you're going to find here first, before going over all of the traps that are going to really ruin your day if you aren't paying any attention. We already know about the disruptor flares. There are normally a good amount of these in the silo itself that you can take some spares home if needed, giving you the ability to throw a wall of light when dealing with other supernatural threats, and it doesn't consume any more resources or ammo. You'll also notice there are small passive lamps present at this site. These give off barely any light at all, but they require no power to run. These can't be deconstructed or moved though, and they are very easy to destroy with a stray shot. You might also find bigger ancient lamps or even floodlights in certain rooms, and these also can't be moved or deconstructed. They give off considerably less light than a non-ancient counterpart, but they can be connected to the electrical grid you're establishing if you've gone the route of bringing batteries or producing power as you go. Or you have the option of looking for burnout generators in the silo that are generally hooked up to those lights already. The ancient burnout generator is the weaker of the two. It produces us 300 watts of power for 4 hours before it shits the bed and dies on you. The industrial burnout generator kicks out 1000 watts for a whole 12 hours before doing exactly the same thing and dying. So just be aware that whilst there is power present at this site, it is very limited.
Daytime! Nighttime! Daytime! Nighttime!
One of the other parts you might find that can be taken with you is the Kino screen and projector. These are two separate structures, but you'll need both of them together for it to function correctly. The Kino screen provides a huge amount of TV recreation across a massive area. Once placed, it'll show you an outline of where the projector needs to be placed to function correctly, with the orientation of it mattering too. So make sure you've rotated the projector to actually point at the screen and it isn't just blinding the projectionist. Then you've got all of the crates that you're going to find in this silo to loot. These are what get highlighted with the arrow when you're exploring, as you need to open 25% of the crates to complete the quest successfully. Depending on what expansions you own and what other mods you have installed is going to determine what appears for you. The list includes Deadlife shells, high explosive shells, incendiary shells, Glitterworld medicine, industrial medicine, hemogen packs, rations, steel, plasteel, bioferrite, chemfuel, industrial components, advanced components, gold, silver, synthread, hyperweave, books, ancient tomes, basic car parts, advanced car parts, ancient weapons, or military apparel. Make sure that you're opening these crates too and you're not deconstructing them, as deconstruction yields nothing. You may also find an ancient planning desk within the complex, which will lead you to another silo immediately, rather than needing to wait the 60 days for the quest to reappear. You'll also find the usual clutter items like rotten crates, spools, empty pallets, ominous machinery and terminals littered around the base, but you may also be able to find useful furniture in dining rooms or bunk rooms, such as steel tables and chairs or ancient cots. And whilst these aren't the most comfortable or beautiful amenities, it does give you a place to avoid the 8 without table debuff and also allow your team to recover their stamina whilst exploring the place thoroughly. Now, I slightly breezed over a couple of crates in that last paragraph that do contain some new gear for you to play with, so let's remedy that. The ancient weapon crates contain, well, ancient weapons. Auto pistols, machine pistols, shotguns and LMGs to be specific. Stat-wise, these weapons are identical to their vanilla counterparts, with an altered appearance that fits the whole Nazi zombie aesthetic of the mod. If you've watched the movie Overlord, you might be picking up very similar vibes while exploring the silos.
Arrêtez, s'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît.
The downside to using these ancient weapons is that they have a limited amount of shots before they'll fall apart. The pistol has 60, the machine pistol has 180, the shotgun has 30, and the LMG has 180. So whilst they can be useful for swapping out from long to short distance weapons in the silo that better suit the threat you're facing, they aren't going to last forever, making it far preferable to just bring down good quality weapons with you to begin with. You'll also find some military coats in the apparel crates. These have a fixed quality, making them incredibly reliable in the stats that they offer. They offer the same amount of part coverage as wearing a duster, which is the majority of players' go-to option for an outer layer due to it covering the most body parts, with it offering values somewhat similar to a duster made of heavy fur. So a Devil Strand duster is going to be better in the majority of cases. These coats do come with the nice upside of 0 market value though, which keeps your colonist value down. Unlike other equipment from the Quest series, these don't suffer from deterioration if left exposed to the elements. They do however still take damage when the colonist wearing them is attacked or hurt in some way, so they aren't eternal like some of the prior unique Quest gear has been. So what threats are present in this silo location? Well, outside of the pitch darkness and the roaming shamblers, you're also likely to stumble across a Deadlife node. These work like an IED, combining both high explosive and Deadlife dust when triggered. You're going to be given just enough time to move away from the explosion before it occurs, so it isn't going to utterly cripple your colonist without fair warning. But there are enough of these in the corridors that if you aren't paying attention when moving to the next room, you might chain 2 or even 3 at the same time, leaving you very little options in terms of where you can flee, especially with how slowly the doors can open. Be aware that these lower levels do still follow the logic of ceiling collapses too, and the HE explosions will be damaging surrounding walls. As well as that, whilst baiting shamblers into explosions will help bring them down, the Deadlife dust that's released is going to ensure they get straight back up into the fight. So ideally you want your kill corridor away from these nodes to ensure that targets stay dead. If it feels like the assault of shamblers is never ending, that's because it is, at least until you've dealt with the death pits. These are going to spawn a new group of shamblers every 4 hours and will also barf out a cloud of Deadlife dust for a good measure. Whilst you are able to fill these death pits in to stop this from happening, the combination of a relatively fast spawn timer and the dust cloud makes this an extremely dangerous push to do so, as once you've cleared out the first wave, the second appears and it brings back the first. The sooner you can find and deal with these, the better. To fill in the death pit, you're going to need 6 chunks of slag. Fortunately for you, the silo is full of junk to deconstruct and that has a high chance to yield it. So that's what you're likely to encounter in the silo. The last thing to do is select the stairs, hit the exit silo button and use that dialogue to haul all of the loot from down here to the map above, which will then let you reform the caravan and take it all home. As we can see from the loot screen here too, these places are stacked with goodies. Honestly, it's not a bad idea to build transport pods at the site and use those to fling the goods and your colonists back home immediately. There's more than enough steel furniture to deconstruct for the materials needed, and if you got lucky you might have found a crate or 2 of chem fuel ready to go. Now's the part that may have confused some people initially. Do we just do these silos forever? No, not quite. You can keep unlocking new silos and returning to them for all of the spoils, but after completing 3 silo quests, you will then be offered the chance to visit the ancient ICBM launch site a few days later. This launch site is the conclusion of the quest chain and it's the one shot that you've got at doing it. Not only that, this quest is going to expire in a quadrum, so you have to get moving. Completing this quest won't lock you out of visiting silos again in the future, so don't worry about losing your lovely, reliable source of loot.
Money me. Money now. Me a money needing a lot now.
That was Charlie's line. Yeah.
Now, this site isn't as visually punishing as it's all above ground, so you're not going to be dealing with pitch darkness. Unfortunately, once you arrive at the ICBM location, you're on a pretty strict timer. You'll be alerted that the general has awoken from their sarcophagus, and they will begin reactivating the traps present at the site. Breach weapons and grenades actually have a pretty solid use case here, as trying to fight through the winding corridors can be tricky. Making your own path instead is a hell of a lot easier, and it'll bring the enemies to you by forcefully waking them up, rather than having you stumble across them when opening a new room. Whilst you're busy trying to fight your way inside, the general will be making their way around the inner sanctum, activating all kinds of different terminals. Each new activation takes around 25 seconds, with a little bit of walking time in between. You'll find that the longer you're here, the worse conditions become, as more traps come online to make your progress into the base even harder. You're going to be dealing with new death pits opening up and releasing more shamblers and Deadlife dust. There are chutes in certain corridors that may open up, which force you into walking in a single file line or blocking off certain pathways entirely. There's Deadlife caskets in the complex that may open, which contain armoured shamblers that are harder to bring down. Dormant turrets may come back online, and there are a lot of turrets in most cases. Rot stink vents may open, which will flood the facility with noxious gases, making it dangerous for your colonists to explore without wearing a mask or having some form of toxic protection. The ancient kennels can be opened, which contain shambling animals, which can be either significantly easier or far more dangerous than a normal shambling zombie. The Deadlife vents in the facility may be turned on too, which makes it a nightmare to deal with shamblers as they just keep getting back up. If you get told that the vents have come online, breaking them is a pretty high priority if you find yourself in a room with one. Once all of these trap terminals have been used, the general will then make their way to the ICBM terminal, In the first facility I explored when testing out this mod, there were 9 active terminals that the General had to use. That means I had about 4 minutes, give or take the movement of the General, before they had activated everything. The General will be activating these terminals regardless of what you're doing too. Standing around outside the facility and trying not to aggro anything doesn't mean that nothing is happening inside. Once the General moves to this final console, you're going to hear a warning siren to let you know that you have 2 minutes to bring them down. Failing this quest leads to a unique world state known as Shambler Apocalypse. This event can last anywhere from 3 quadrums to 3 years, replacing the worldwide weather with permanent deathfall and making progressively more Shambler hordes on the overworld every few days. These hordes are going to roam the world and attack other faction bases, including your own. If they attack an NPC faction, it's a coin flip as to whether the defenders succeed or fail, with a failure resulting in another horde that bolsters the Shambler's forces, and a success removing the horde that attacked them from the map. If a horde happens to reach your home, you can expect a large amount of Shamblers to attack your base, with them being further bolstered by the death pool that continually brings them back. So whilst incendiary weapons might be nice to bring them down and get rid of the bodies, just remember that the in-game firefighter protocol isn't going to kick in, as the weather cannot change anymore. If you want to be proactive, you can attack the roaming Shambler hordes on the world map to stop them before they become a larger problem. If you didn't want that to happen, you can avoid it by bringing down the General before they complete the final inputs on that last terminal. Despite being the leader of the Shamblers, the General is still a viable baseliner, who comes in with a pretty specific backstory combo of Officer's Shadow and the General, leading to high shooting, melee, social and intellectual skills, as well as them usually rocking traits that the creep joiners from Anomaly make use of, and having access to the Deadlife dust ability. You can get unlucky, as I did on my first attempt, with a General that has the unwaveringly loyal tag, but it's normally possible to recruit them if you can bring them down without outright murdering them. Regardless of if you picked the Paragon or Renegade option when dealing with the General, they always wear 2 pieces of unique gear on their person, which you can make use of. These are bits of gear that do not have a HP value, making them near indestructible and immune to deterioration. Just don't let the colonist that's wearing them be completely obliterated, as if the body that's equipped with these is destroyed, it still removes them from your game. The General's cap doesn't offer much in terms of protection, but it adds 60% to negotiation ability and it helps with slave suppression. This will make your moral guide absolutely god tier when it comes to recruiting and converting prisoners. So it doesn't need to be worn at all times either. If your prison is empty, this can be stored on a shelf next to the cells until it's needed. The other bit of gear is the insignia, worn on the on top layer so it functions like an accessory. This lowers mental break threshold by 22% and makes the colonist who's wearing it immune to global certainty loss, meaning they'll never be swayed by a conversion attempt. Given that a trait like Very Neurotic increases mental break threshold by 14% for the bonus of 40% global work speed, you can see how impactful a minus 22% offset to that threshold is, basically changing what would normally be the extreme mental break threshold into your new minor one.
Urge to kill. Fading. 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 Rising. Fading.
And that about does it for Deadlife. If you want to use the Shambler Apocalypse setting to turn your own game into a zombie survival simulator for a run, whilst you can't add it to the scenario setup through editing, you can enable it permanently via dev mode. Make and start your colony, turn on dev mode, select the option for open debug actions and then search for game condition. Add game condition, Shambler Apocalypse, duration permanent. Boom. Now you're playing the game Project Zombworld. You can safely turn dev mode back off and it'll be there for the rest of your run. Just don't expect your neighbours to last very long with this set as a forever condition though. All in all, it's a really neat mod. A very different approach from what the Generator and the Cryptoforge offered, with this seeming like the developmental progression of what Vaults from the Ancients faction mod had previously offered us. These actually give you some challenge for the resources that they're rewarding you with, and win or fail the final quest, the result is interesting either way. It's pretty cool to watch the missiles take off and then have to spend the next couple of years altering your entire combat strategy to deal with the continually resurrecting threats that appear on your map. It also makes for a ridiculously good source of bioferrite and shards, so if you are going for an anomaly heavy run, it can actually benefit you to purposefully fail this quest. You're going to have ample subjects landing on your doorstep for void study. If you'd like to see the current suggestion list for mod rundowns, it's available to view on my Patreon page. All the posts there are totally free to read and it's pinned at the very top. Obviously we've got 1.6 coming soon, so we'll see how that works out in terms of what mods get updated and what gets covered. You can support me in producing content like this for just £1 a month. It gets your name in the credits of these videos and it helps me to stay alive. Thanks for watching folks. If you have any mods you would like to see a full breakdown for or suggestions of mods you would like to see covered, feel free to leave them in the comments, I might get around to them. I'll be back again soon with another Rimworld mod rundown. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon or evening. Take care.